Quintilli. It's been my privilege to chair the Government Affairs Committee this past year. The committee has over 30 members from different companies, large and small, and from every part of the state, helping review and consider legislative initiatives that we've developed or that we're tracking and following. The committee has met on 7 different occasions, like so many others, often in person and then via video conferencing, sometimes monthly as the General Assembly is in session and a busier time. I'd certainly like to thank each and every member for their participation, making government affairs a part of their busy schedules. And as you all know, advocacy is a core pillar of ACEC Ohio's mission. And it's the involvement of those members and frankly all of our member firms, their considerations and outreaches to the General Assembly members that make such a huge impact for our businesses. I'd like to thank, before we get very far, Kevin Futrick of Government Advantage Group and his team for their tireless work on behalf of ACEC. You'll hear from Kevin in just a moment, but he and his crew represent our firms each day with the administration and with the General Assembly members with professionalism, knowledge, and trust and genuineness. They're excellent ambassadors for us. I want to share with all of you how often we hear from General Assembly members at just how much they value Kevin and his team and their approach, and so how valuable that is to us as our ambassadors. I'd also like to thank Beth, Holly, and Haley. The Government Affairs Committee thanks them very much for all they do. Fantastic support in just the committee's organization and communications, but most importantly, Beth, for her as well, incredible representation of ACEC Ohio to the administration, other agencies, and the General Assembly. Not too many years ago, we spoke about how much we desired to have a president that was that trusted resource for folks to reach out, and we see that happen month in, month out, where agencies or legislators reach out across to Beth. So thank you very much, Beth, and the rest of your team. Our year-end report was available to you online. I hope many of you, if you've not, that you will take some time to go read it. The committee over the past year has reviewed many, many different legislative issues and proposals. Again, some that we initiate, as Chairman Rod mentioned, things like indemnification, and then many that come up from other means that we track and follow and interact with, whether that's supportive or in opposition to potential changes. The list is long, and it ranges from things like the indemnity bill, water funds, revolving loans, or refinancing loans for various types of projects, to licensure restrictions and reciprocity. In just a moment, I'll ask Kevin to join me, and he can share a little bit more about that in current events. We want to give you an update as well as what we've done in the past. And what a year it's been, though. As you've heard before, we started in the afterglow of a significant motor vehicle user fee increase. We were looking ahead to a strong state budget that was going to result in a robust ODOT program, surplus dollars, if you will, for the state that translate into water, environmental, roadway, transit, aviation programs. And then just a mere 3 months ago, we figuratively closed the shutters against a storm like none of us have probably ever seen before in our lifetimes. And during those last 90 days, we've watched record unemployment figures, travel reductions by cars on the road, probably greater than 50%, in air travel greater than 90%, and that we're all well aware of the significant state budget cuts that has occurred just in this fiscal year and the ones as we look forward to next year. But so as we've emerged from that storm now, and we begin to open things up again, like before, we still have the same issues that we were tracking and following and advancing forward. And if Kevin, if you'll come on now, I'll turn that over for an update from you, and Kevin can share some more facts and figures related to that. But we continue to make progress with things like the indemnity bill for our firms. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. What I'd like to do, you do have Greg's report, but what I'd like to do is kind of start with a bit of a big picture highlight of what's going on around Cap Square. As Greg said, I think anticipation was very high at the beginning of this year that we were going to have a very active General Assembly. We were going to have a very robust economy in Ohio. Back in January, a mere 6 months ago, unemployment was at 4.3%. We were on target as a state to have another $600 million fiscal year surplus at the end of fiscal year 2020. We had $2.7 billion sitting in the state's rainy day fund. New business growth was exceeding all expectations. And then 3 months later, a pandemic hits. Ohio's unemployment rate as of last week is at 23.4% of the working population is unemployed, or 1.3 million Ohioans who have filed for unemployment in the last 3 months. That budget surplus we were projecting has become a $775 million shortfall, which forced the governor to order all agencies and departments to cut $775 million from the last 2 months of their fiscal year 20 budgets, and to look for further cuts in fiscal year 2021, depending on how the economy rebounds. Those 1.3 million unemployed Ohioans have put a strain on the unemployment comp fund. This fund is projected to run out of money sometime this month. But the legislature is currently looking at two options. One that the Senate recommended yesterday is to issue general obligation bonds so that they could borrow the money to meet these unemployment obligations. And the other would be similar to what the state did back in 2008, 2009, which would be to borrow money from the federal government to meet these obligations. Also, to deal with the COVID-19 crisis, I know the slide shows Senate Bill 310, but the politics right now around Cap Square is a little bit crazy. Senate Bill 310, until yesterday, was the vehicle for the state to disperse the CARES Act funds that they received from the federal government. Ohio did receive $4.5 billion from the federal government under the CARES Act. 1.2 million of that was to go to local governments. Of that 1.2 million, 775 million was directly funded to the 5 largest counties in the city of Columbus. And the remaining 355 million was included in Senate Bill 310 to be distributed to all local governments based on their 2019 local government fund distribution. This money is to be used for COVID-19 related expenses. And the hope is that there will be additional funds coming from the federal government to help local governments with respect to their losses of sales tax dollars due to the shuttering of the state for the last 2 months. The remaining $75 million that's available to local governments is being held back until we can get some further guidance from the federal government as to how those monies can be spent. Again, as of yesterday, it was included, the capital reappropriations bill. Interestingly, the House proposed a capital reappropriations bill that was about $695 million. That essentially was half of the Senate recommendation of $1.28 billion. And the House originally achieved their reduction by eliminating all higher education projects. The Senate argued very strenuously that the projects on their list were already bonded and in progress, and that stopping them would likely hurt the economy more than help. The House ultimately relinquished, and the full appropriations list was included in Senate Bill 310, including, for those of you who work with OPWC, $475.696 million for projects, OPWC projects. Just want to touch on a couple of our pieces of legislation. House Bill 159, our indemnification bill. After our hearing in April of last year, in 2019, we learned that there was opposition from local government groups, and then we learned there was opposition from OFCC, ODOT, and potentially the Turnpike Commission. We have been working strenuously the last several months to try and come up with a compromise, which we finally did achieve a couple of weeks ago, and we agreed to 3 amendments that were offered and accepted last week in committee to the bill. The first one would clarify that the bill does not preclude a public authority from suing a engineering consulting firm for breach of contract. The second includes indemnity for damages of loss related to infringement of intellectual property. And the third clarifies that reasonable attorney fees, costs, and expenses are part of the liabilities arising under an indemnity obligation. These three amendments have made ODOT, OFCC, Turnpike Commission, and the Municipal League neutral on the bill, and they have all testified that they are neutral on the bill. We are now just awaiting a vote by the committee, the House Civil Justice Committee. We were hoping the bill would be up this week, but there is a House rule that requires 2 weeks' notice to leadership of any bill being voted out of committee. So we are anticipating that at a future hearing, Civil Justice Committee will move the bill. It was mentioned about the H2 Ohio Fund. There was a lot of concern. H2 Ohio Fund was funded with $172 million in 2020, and that stipulated that any surplus GRF revenues from 2020 and 2021 would go to the program. Obviously, with the $775 million shortfall the state was experiencing, there was concern that there would not be money available for H2 Ohio moving forward. However, the governor has determined that there would be no cuts to this program moving forward, and they will identify funds for 2021. Additionally, we're also following two bills related to H2 Ohio, House Bill 7, which creates a framework for perpetual funding, and Senate Bill 2, which creates the statewide watershed planning and management program. The next bill, Senate Bill 136, is a bill that establishes a payment assurance program for registered design professionals. ACEC Ohio is a proponent of this bill. It has had 3 hearings in the Senate, and we are just awaiting for a vote by the Senate committee. We are also following several bills dealing with occupational licensure. Many of these bills seek to reduce Ohio's licensing requirements to make it easier to obtain licenses and become part of Ohio's workforce. We have worked with like-minded interest groups to point out the differences between various occupational licenses and professional licenses such as PE licenses and why it is important to maintain higher standards for these professional licenses. Finally, Senate Bill 285 is the governor's distracted driving initiative. ACEC Ohio, along with many of the members of the For Ohio Coalition, are proponents of this bill. The coalition has decided that they would stay together to advocate for this bill so that as we move into next year and the next transportation budget, we will still be together as a group to advocate for indexing of the motor fuel user fees.
Beth, I'm not sure if Kevin is able to join us. If not, I'm going to turn it over to Fred Sealing, and we'll move on to the PAC report. And if Kevin is able to come back and join us, perhaps we can capture that toward the end. Fred, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Just the first piece of information, the PAC operates on a calendar year, unlike the rest of ACEC. So my report today will focus on half of 2019 and half of 2020. This is a legal requirement for PACs, so that's the only reason. And it's often a point of confusion for member firms when trying to figure out when the PAC donations or goals are met, but we operate on a calendar year. My theme for this year is we have made progress, but we continue to work to improve. Next slide, please. This slide shows how PAC contributions have increased over the years, especially since 2017. You can see the organization and the PAC committee have put an extra priority on PAC donations and contributions and activity, and you can see that it's paying off in contributions. And next slide, please. This is the number of firms who have met their goals, not firms that are contributing, but firms that have met their goals. So you can see how that's increasing. We'll see what 2020 brings. We're really pushing hard on that, and I'll speak a little bit more about that later. Our 2019 highlights include 65 member firms meeting their goals, over $37,000 raised for the Ohio PAC, and almost $29,000 for the national PAC, which gave us total contributions of $66,000. We met our national PAC goal. We, ACEC Ohio, met our national PAC goal for the 4th year in a row. And finally, Ohio contributed more money to the national PAC than the national PAC distributed to Ohio legislators. This year, we contributed more than, or $400 more than they contributed to our legislators. But this is the first time that Ohio was not a donor state where other state organizations were supporting us. So we're very proud that we can finally say that we are supporting ourselves. We had the 3rd largest number of individual donors, and this is really impressive because it means everybody's getting involved in the process. We have we're number 3, and we're only behind California and Texas. So that's some pretty rare air, and we're very proud of that, and we hope to continue that. And maybe you don't know, but the national PAC is really quite effective. They raised over $1.1 million, and that puts them in the top 3% of all federal PACs, and it's the largest PAC in the AEC industry. So we're out there advocating for our businesses and for our industry, and we're able to do that very effectively with your support. In 2019, as we already mentioned, we held meetings with the leadership teams of the Ohio Senate and the Ohio House. So those are a few of the 2019 highlights. 2020, we started the year off in January with a PAC appreciation luncheon for all of those firms who met their goals. That was in January, and we had Steve Hall from National and Kevin Futrick speak about the pressing issues that were coming in 2020. We did not anticipate COVID. Then also in January, we sent out letters to each one of the firm PAC contacts with their goals and providing that information to them. PAC kickoff event was held in February. We had a great turnout, and we raised almost $20,000 at that event that was held at the State House. We're also very grateful for the 12 sponsors that we had. We really appreciate that. As we got into our fundraising, we decided to make a big push to try and get funds raised early in the year instead of waiting until the end of the year when we make a push and it gets to be in the holiday issues. And it's a good thing we did with the COVID striking. This slide shows you where we are today. We're number 8 in out of all states and national. 38 firms have met their goals already, and we've raised almost $42,000. So we're very appreciative of that. COVID did force the cancellation of some of our regional events since we weren't able to meet face-to-face, but we were able, as Rod said, to have Zoom meetings with some of our representatives, Gibbs, Balderson, Gonzalez, and Capter. And everybody who contributed to the PAC was able to participate in those Zoom calls. We're moving forward as best we can. And in fact, in August, we're going to try something new. We're going to have an online trivia contest. So look forward to that. We'll see how each team can do, and we'll see how the competition comes out, who will be the top. We would like to thank everyone for their support of the PAC, and please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions. I'd like to close with a quote from our national PAC chair. He says, "Get into politics or get out of business." And what he's really saying there is, hey, the rules and regulations that we have to comply with and we have to design around are forthcoming in the political process. So we need to be active in there, and we are able to advocate through our PAC, and we thank everyone for that.